I think you should be able to hear me now. Yep, there we go. We're getting a lot of questions right now surrounding what has happened in Pennsylvania, what has happened in Georgia, what has happened in Michigan. And we need answers. We need answers. And you know what? It's okay to ask. It's okay to ask these questions. The mainstream media is trying to make you think that somehow it's not, right? The New York Times blaring their headline that there was no voter fraud whatsoever. There's no inconsistencies there. We're getting all kinds of reports of inconsistencies. Are you effectively calling this postal worker in Pennsylvania that has come forward a liar? What about the glitch that happened in Michigan? You know, you have senators, state senators there in Michigan that are demanding answers. They sent a letter to the Secretary of State today saying, we can't ratify this. We can't actually okay this until we have some questions answered. And you know why? Because thousands and thousands and thousands of votes in one particular county there in Michigan went into the wrong column. And while the Secretary of State in Michigan says it was just human error, the state Republican senators are saying, well, wait a second, how do we know that? This particular software system, Dominion, was used in 47 counties. And by the way, it was used in 47 counties, and we don't know. We don't know exactly what transpired. They know that in Texas, they passed on Dominion. In Texas, they said, we don't think that we can guarantee these the sanctity of these votes. Meanwhile, I was looking through some old testimony of the Dominion CEO in front of Congress from roughly a year ago, and there was a congresswoman out of San Mateo, California, who actually really put it to him and said, look, you know, we're concerned because some of the components for this stuff, they come from China. This was Rudy Giuliani's complaint this morning on WABC. He was making the point that he didn't emphasize China as the Democrat congresswoman did, but he was concerned because it was a Canadian company and some of this is routed through Spain. Look, I mean, when it comes to our votes, right, shouldn't it just all be right here at home? I mean, maybe the Department of Defense needs to be involved in this one because you've got to do whatever you need to do to secure the system and secure the software, because nobody should be left in the position where we, as we are tonight, are asking questions. And so for that reason, I worry that you've got 71 million people out there that may never fully trust this. And that is unacceptable. And so the mainstream media right now, they want you to say, okay, ignore it, nothing to see here, nothing, just keep on going. And how dare you, by the way, if you are even questioning this, then somehow that in and of itself is horrific, absolutely horrific. In fact, some of these mainstream media organizations are, you know, they're taking names who actually not only supported the president's policies over the last 4 years, but who's daring to ask any questions. We're just supposed to just, you know, totally accept this when there's so many discrepancies out there. I don't think that's okay. I don't think that's very American. To me, the American way is to be able to ask these questions and to be able to have a dialogue. And so be it. If the American people elect Joe Biden, then he will be the next president of the United States. Right now, he's projected by many mainstream media organizations to in fact be that. But until this whole thing is said and done, why are we saying, I mean, why is it that media organizations are in charge of calling this? Shouldn't it be the actual states and the secretaries of state in each of these states that oversees the election process? Why would the media project it? I mean, if you're in the facts business, report the facts. I mean, maybe you can leave it to your opinion people to project who the winner is. I'm just looking out for the news organizations, right? And the protection of the news organizations and their reputations. Anyway, to me, it's fair. It's fair game to be asking questions. It's frankly kind of our duty as journalists to ask questions. And once we can be satisfied that everything is okay, well, then there you go. Right? And there you go. And that will be that. And we'll all strive to make sure that the right policies do get put in place. And if that means turning things around in 2020 or 2024, so be it. But again, you got to get back to the situation at hand, which is that there's a lot of questions surrounding some of these ballots. In Michigan, with Dominion voting machines. In Pennsylvania, with postal workers there. I mean, is Mr. Hopkins suddenly, some kind of crazy hillbilly? I don't think so. If you watch the interview that he did, this is the postal worker in Erie, Pennsylvania, that came forward saying that he was told to segregate all of the votes that had come in after the fact, right? And he believed, because he overheard a conversation, that they were going to postmark them from the day before. And he's, by the way, not the only one saying that. There's been some additional postal workers that have come forward in Pennsylvania saying that. Now, he points out that he's an American first, and that's what he cares about. But he's gotten just caught up in this whole entire mess. And before you knew it, they had the Inspector General's office of the United States Postal Service down there, who apparently, allegedly, also per Project Veritas, has some biases, shall we say, of his own per his Twitter account. So he goes down there and he sweet talks this Mr. Hopkins into effectively sort of changing his position. But Hopkins is saying, no, wait a second, that's not what I did. I didn't recant, as the Washington Post and his Democrats have put it. So you've got the postal workers in Pennsylvania. We need to get to the bottom of that story. You've got problems with this software allegedly. Now again, they'll tell you it's human error. Let's make sure of that. I mean, I don't think that's asking too much to make sure of that. It's good to see you guys all here tonight. I'm Trish Regan. If you're not listening to my podcast, I'm gonna remind you to do so, because that's where I am every single day. Morning, noon, and night, you can get that one. I'm there, and you need to listen, because I think these are important issues that need to be discussed. And we need to be investigating all of this. And again, we have every right to do so. Don't let them tell you otherwise. This is your right as an American. We have a First Amendment. We have freedom of speech. So even though you got the CNN anchors out there with clearly their own political biases trying to say that this is not right, you can't look into this, we need to move on. I think anytime that you can verify this and you can therefore gain more trust in a system, that's important, especially now. And don't forget what they did for 4 years, right? I mean, for 4 years. In fact, even when Joe Biden was campaigning, he was out there on the campaign stoop saying that the president stole the election. Stole the election? I mean, that is a huge charge. It's a huge accusation. And the mainstream media was constantly saying that. Do you see me saying that? Do you see conservative folks out there that are asking questions saying that? No, we're not saying that. We are saying, let's get to the bottom of it. Nobody's accusing anybody of stealing anything, as the left did to Donald Trump for 4 years. In fact, the quote was, he and the Russians stole it. I mean, that's a huge charge to level. You want to talk about conspiracy theories? Well, you can throw in that dirty dossier as well, and boom, you've got yourself the makings of quite a conspiracy theory. And yet that stuff was out there promoted constantly by the left. It is their right to do so as Americans. It's their right to ask questions. It's their right to speak freely, just as it is our right to speak freely. I'm responsible, and therefore I'm not going to level charges that can't be backed up, but I am going to ask questions. And so I'll go back to here the Dominion voting machines. I want to know who invests in that company. I want to know if there's any foreign influence. I want to know if China has any investment in it. I think these are fair questions. Let us know who's on the board of directors. Let's be transparent here. It's a private company originally out of Canada. Why is a Canadian company the one that's counting our votes? I mean, do we not have the wherewithal, the creativity, the technological know-how to be able to do this ourselves? We ought to be able to count our own votes. This should be an American company, and we should be awfully sure that it is like Fort Knox, right? Good to see all you guys here tonight. Yeah, I know there's a lot of questions right now because The media is making all sorts of projections. And my point again is these are projections, but they're not final. And until they're final, we really shouldn't be treating this as some kind of fait accompli. It's not right. It's not fair. I mean, you owe it to the 71 million people, and still counting, right, that voted for this president. I mean, we're getting reports now of, this is according to Sidney Powell, who's the lawyer for Michael Flynn. She's talking about over 400,000 ballots allegedly that were cast only for Biden. I mean, no other names in the columns. If that's the case, that sounds rather suspicious to me. Meanwhile, I want to share with you some excerpts from a letter that Michigan, let's see if I can pull it up, the folks in Michigan have submitted. These are the senators because they have numerous concerns. Let me pull this up. Just give me a second here. But the volume is super low, everybody says. So maybe I just need to talk louder. How's that? How's that? It's good to see you, by the way. It's really good to have you here. Did you see China? Did you guys see China today? Big headline across the Global Times. China is so proud and happy that Joe Biden is in the seat. They're offering their congratulations to Joe Biden. I am sure that China's happy. I'm really sure China's happy. I'm sure this is like a dream come true for them, if in fact it does come true, because economically speaking, let's not forget what the Chinese want, what they are after, and that is, for lack of a better term, to control the world, to be the hegemonic power that the United States of America has been in the post-World War II era. They want the yuan to be the world's reserve currency. My sources have said that they're already speaking to a lot of the Europeans behind our back, trying to massage that so that they could see the yuan as the world's reserve currency. You also have them out there creating Bitcoin-style products, cryptocurrencies, to try to be a world's reserve currency. There's a lot that goes with being the world's reserve currency, a lot of good stuff too, right? We're able to borrow in part because we are the world's reserve currency. And so China wants that. China wants to be in control. And I think if we're not very careful, I know a lot of you are not fans of the CCP, and I get it. If we're not careful, we run the risk that we wake up one day and you better learn to speak Mandarin, because the Chinese could be controlling the world. And so you have to be incredibly careful about who is in the Oval Office, what policy choices are made over the next 4 to 8 years. That may be all you have. We are right now currently the world's largest economy. But that's in danger. That is in jeopardy. And my goodness, if they succeed in these lockdowns that they're trying to force upon us right now, well, that whole world's largest economy thing, you could probably kiss that goodbye. We saw what happened in the second quarter. We saw that we plunged into territory losses that we hadn't seen since the Great Depression, that really we haven't ever seen. We don't need that again. We don't want that again. And yet you've got this COVID task force member, Dr. Osterholm, that Biden appointed. He's talking about not just shutdowns, lockdowns for at least 6 weeks. He actually says, and this gets me to China, he says we could pay people to lose their jobs. He wants to pay you to lose your job. What kind of system is that? I think we know, right? And so then you get a situation where America's debt level is just astronomically high. I mean, as if the $27 trillion worth of outstanding debt wasn't bad enough. You got this Dr. Osterholm, who clearly doesn't know a thing about the economy, saying we can pay people to lose their jobs. And why? He said, because interest rates are so low and the savings rate is so high because of the previous lockdown. So just borrow the money from ourselves. Who's on first? Can we get some adults in the room? Some adults who understand the economy? This is why the president is right to discourage any additional lockdowns. Look, we ought to be smart enough to be able to protect the people that need to be protected. The elderly, the people with underlying conditions, the people that are the most vulnerable in society. You protect them, but everybody else has to keep things going because you need a strong economy to fight this thing. Remember that. I keep saying it. It's landed me in a little bit of trouble along the way, but I'll keep saying it and I'll keep fighting for what I believe in, for what I believe is right. It's good to have you here. You know, I think Americans need to stand up. They need to stand up. And if nothing else, you know what's going to come of this? More transparency. We can't just roll over and play dead. Okay, we can't allow that, because as numerous politicians, in fact, Louis Gohmert said this the other day, the representative from Texas. He said, if we do that, and I think Lindsey Graham has said this too, then we will lose everything. And he's talking about the Republicans. He's saying they'll lose elections going forward, every election. I'm not just concerned about that. I'm concerned about not just Republicans, but every single American. If you don't have a voice because somebody can manipulate something, or there's the perception that somebody can manipulate something, then that's a huge problem for society. Yes, socialism would be disastrous. I know we have no fans of socialism here. I just think about what's happening, what's unfolding right now, and we need this integrity for our ballots, right? You can't be in a system where it's just immediately decided. And I mean, why are you shutting down the votes in certain places on election night? That's another sort of weird anomaly. We need to be asking these questions. We need to get to the bottom of it. Believe me, if the tables were turned, they would be doing that, right? I mean, if the president was leading by a sliver, then you know they'd be running all kinds of forensic studies to try and figure out. They would be looking into the software of these voting machines. Of course, right? Because you need to be able to trust the system. So let's give it a few days. Let's give it a little bit of a time, because we need to make sure everything is on the up and up. That shouldn't be too much to ask. And the mainstream media needs to get over themselves. They need to stop being so smug, so self-assured. You think about the New York Times. The New York Times, who, by the way, wouldn't even accept a sitting senator's opinion piece in their pages. Remember that one? They all had to, lose it because Senator Tom Cotton wrote about what's needed in the case of riots and looting. Maybe sometimes you got to call in the National Guard, and they just lost it. They were so angry about that. These people are out there saying there was nothing nefarious, nothing wrong. We know. We made a few phone calls. Well, did you talk to Mr. Hopkins in Pennsylvania, the postal worker there, who's got quite a story? Did you talk to the people whose votes were affected because of the glitch with Dominion voting systems in Michigan? You know, it seems to me, New York Times, you need to do a little bit more reporting, because that's kind of your job, right? You know, I'm fine with people having opinions. I'm fine with even the New York Times having opinions. But what I don't appreciate is the idea that somehow their opinion is just supposed to be fact. No, it's an opinion. And for them to present this as fact, and not only as fact, to try and shut down anybody who has a different viewpoint or is just asking the questions, that's wrong. It's un-American. We have a First Amendment for a reason, and I'd like to keep it. Thank you very much. And yet, what do we see? Blacklists. We got CNN anchors pointing to, anybody who questions this, saying, remember that. We've got people making threats about, you're not going to be employed. You're going to be a social outcast. I mean, what are they, the Gestapo? Kind of feels that way. It's good to have you all here tonight. I really think we need to be asking these questions, and I continue to do so. And I encourage you to go to trishintel.com, trishintel.com, where we've got a couple good stories, actually. I'm going to pull them up for you right now on Trish Intel, where we've got Fauci. Even Fauci is kind of like, yeah, no, we can't handle another lockdown. So there was an interview today where he says, not liking the idea of another lockdown. You get the Mississippi governor saying, yeah, no, to the lockdown proposal from Joe Biden's camp. It would be really horrible. And yet, what are they doing in New York City? Oh, and New York in general. Governor Cuomo there is saying you cannot have more than 10 people in your house. Starting tonight, actually 10 p.m. You cannot have more than 10 individuals in your home. If you do, it's going to be a violation of state law. No respect for the individual. And therein lies the problem, really, with all of this. You need to respect individuals' rights. I mean, that's what our country was founded upon. And so for them to be making these accusations, meanwhile, I predict huge problems for Nancy Pelosi. By the way, I just did this and a bunch of you liked the video, so make sure you're liking it. Make sure you're subscribing to this channel. If you have not subscribed, hit the subscribe button right now, okay? Because we're going to keep talking, and you know I'm all over this, and I have tremendous sources, and we're going to continue digging in to figure out what went down. And I will not rest until I get to the bottom of it, until I get the truth. Whatever that may be, I'm fine with it. But we need to actually be dealing in reality, not just in what the mainstream media wants you to think. So yes, hit the like button. But Nancy Pelosi right now, this story is front and center on TrishIntel.com. So she's out there refusing to take any responsibility for the Democrats' losses. You know, once again, I would say the news business should get out of the projection business, because I do believe that Fox News predicted that the Democrats would take the House, as well as 5 seats that they didn't get. So it looks like they are going to take the House, but those 5 seats, they were completely wrong on. And so again, maybe just hold off on predictions until you actually have the final count, you know, for the sake of the news division. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to admit that she screwed up. And so now you've got this power play going on, right? Between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the crazy socialists that are out there trying to reinvent America, tear it down, get rid of all the culture that has made us the country we are. They want to get rid of that versus some of the centrists. I mean, think about the Virginia congresswoman, right? Who said, I don't ever want to hear dismantle the police, defund the police again. She's right to say that. Absolutely, positively right to say that, because that is not the foundation of a society. You actually need law and order. You need the police, duh, in a society. And yet the extremists in the party are doubling down. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez having a very combative interview the other day with the New York Times, basically threatening her party. So this is what it's going to come down to. They're going to have to make a decision. And I fear for the United States right now. I really do. Because I do not think, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris wind up in that seat, I don't think that they have the backbone to fight against this. I think these are career politicians, and career politicians do whatever they think is best for them in the moment, right? They're very transactional players. This is not about what they think is right. This is about how they and their team can get elected. And so consequently, if you have the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, the Bernie Sanders, the Rashida Tlaibs taking things over, we run a lot of risks. Meanwhile, Elizabeth Warren is campaigning for Treasury Secretary. So we have a lot of headwinds in front of us. Georgia is going to be incredibly, incredibly, incredibly important. Everybody needs to focus on Georgia. The Senate needs to stay conservative. If it doesn't, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are successful with these projections, then you're running some serious risks. So for the sake of our country, we need to be focused on this right now. We need to continue paying attention. And I promise you, I will do my part to continue gathering information. So subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, go to TrishIntel.com. You can download the podcast there, as well as on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, on Google, you name it. The Trish Regan Intel Show is the name. You can follow me on Twitter and on Parler right now. We are just getting started. We have a lot of work to do, and we're going to keep on talking because truth and freedom matters for the sake of every single one of us to have a prosperous, healthy, happy future. Have a terrific night. Have a terrific weekend. I'll see you back here tomorrow. How about it?